based on what they call second generation technology. We see lignocellulose as a potentially very good feedstock, using things like algae, which can produce you like 100 tons per acre per year, as being highly productive biomass systems that can take us to these kinds of fuel substitution. So those are basically the goals that we want. And if you notice, there is a big synergy with the Sustainable Energy for All, because they're looking to double access. And one way to put is, conventionally, we had a definition of energy among us, which was that the quality of life, which you heard a lot this morning, of any society is directly proportional to the availability of energy and the efficiency at which we convert it to goods and services. So you can have a lot of energy, do a lousy job converting it to, and have a miserable quality of life, or you can have vice versa, like we are, where we don't have the energy and we don't use efficiency, and then we're in the mess with it. But we have to add one piece to it because of climate change, which is, if you want to maintain that quality of life, the energy has to be sustainable. And sustainable not just economically, but sustainable economically. And this is where the SITDOC and the SG's Sustainable Energy for All initiative come together. But let me move on back to the money side, if I can just go down one. All right. Now, what we're saying is we had, and we can skip this one because I think the colleague did a good job explaining what took place in Barbados. Okay. So, how do we get to this target that we set? 25, 50, 25 by 2033. We basically did an assessment that says we will need to invest somewhere about $500 million US per year over the next 2 decades to meet these targets. And that's the very conservative figure with lots of efficiency. If we go heavy on demand sides, we're closer to 20 billion. Now, very interesting, because that $20 billion that we have to invest is less than the annual oil bill of all the small island states. So if you take 220 million barrels and you multiply it by even just the price of crude at $90 a barrel, you basically show that we are paying for energy. So the issue is, how can we bring those funds forward so that we can actually displace export and use the savings to pay the financing? Well, we've started some discussions with the World Bank about securitizing, and this will be done with a number of ways. One is securitizing future greenhouse gas emissions. So if we basically are emitting 30 million tons of emissions and the market pays us $5 or $10 annually, that's a significant amount of money if we can have it securitized over 5 to 10 years. So that's one path, securitizing future emissions. The other is basically going into the global financial markets. If you look these days at the rates of treasury bills and other investment tools, the yields are very low. But our utility is making 15%, 10 to 15%. 20%. So you can see between what an energy business is actually making and what it could make if it had its money in cash is the order of 5 or 6 times, 600%. So if we can offer investment or return on investments of 5 to 6%, there is a significant amount of funding that we can tap into. So if I just go down a little bit more, show a little bit. Please, one more. Okay. So what do we see as some of the benefits? We're saying basically that we're able to participate in carbon trading. We can pursue collectively low carbon and carbon negative technology development. And this is, I want to address here, because as small island states, we've always been in the position of being technology takers, right? We cannot demand to the market that we want a particular technology because you're 10, 20, 100, 200, 300, 500 megawatts. For an investor to make that kind of technological risk, you figure that not really worth it. But if you're 10,000 megawatts, yeah, now the scale changes. So now we can pursue things like ocean thermal energy conversion, which for a long time, some of you know me, has been one of my major disappointments with small island states, and indeed with Jamaica, because if we have the ocean, which is the largest solar collector on this planet, every day, we get at least 25,000 barrels of oil equivalent on every hectare of that ocean, yeah? And we know how to convert that low-grade heat into electricity, how to make hydrogen, how to desalinate water, how to set up mariculture. And yet, with this vast resources, we in island states, we own 20% of the world's most productive part of the oceans. Yet still, the most we do is we send a few little boats to fish, and we run sewage discharge lines, and we figure that's utilization of our largest resources. But this is something that we need to do collectively. And that's one of the opportunities that SIDSDOC provides us, is collective action. So within a few years, we will have the first OTEC plants in operation. More than likely they will be in the Pacific, of all places, in a little island called the Republic of the Marshall Islands. An island barely 2 meters above sea level, who understand that to build coastal defense, to have a future, they have to change their energy sector. Yeah? So already in some places, people are beginning to put together the future and the present. Yeah? And we have to do this. I know we're energy people, and we don't spend a lot of time worrying about climate change, but to a large extent, we are, not we per se here, but the global energy sector and the fossil fuel dependency is 70% the cause of climate change, and it cannot be fixed without participation of the energy sector. Now, a little bit on our utilities. How do we see ourselves supporting our utilities? We said we're putting in place national financing mechanism. And we'll show you in the following slide just a little bit about how this national financing. We are totally convinced that there are significant amounts of resources in our countries that should be invested in the energy sector if the government do the right thing. Yeah? We invest in lots of things. Other people invest in our energy sector. Whenever we go to get loans, it's other people's money. Why can it be our money? So we think that we can generate. Carbon trading, I mentioned before, as a mechanism to return funding back to the countries, and other financing sources, for example, working with the Japanese to help them create revolving funds around a particular technology, like OTEC, that would be repaid not as a debt, but basically on energy savings. So if you build a 10 megawatt OTEC plant, and it saves you 300,000 barrels of diesel for the year, that money is used to service that debt until it is paid off. So different types of innovation as to where we finance, and mobilizing investment through trust funds. So if I go to I think we try to capture it in this slide. What we're saying basically is that there is a significant amount of funds at the global level looking for places to invest. People are actually subsidizing US treasuries. Yeah? That people buy US treasuries, 10, 12, 20-year notes, and when they get their money back, it will not be equal to the present value of the money they put in. Yeah? It will be, but why do they do it? Because they need a secure place to put their money. So what we are saying is we're talking to the World Bank about creating this global revolving fund that would be managed by them. It would tap both global resources and national resources from our credit unions, from our insurance companies, from our public and private sector investment that would invest in these projects, and then from those savings be repaid by the revolving fund. So what we are now doing is trying to get all this architecture, the types of governance systems, the financial fiduciary systems that need to be in place that would give confidence to global investors to invest in the SIDS energy sector. And as I said, we are feasible, we're viable, we look at it. We pay each year more than $20 billion for energy. So it's not a question of whether we have the money, the question of how we continue to use the money in the future. Please. Another way of looking at our support to local utilities to get the electricity sector, technology transfers. One of the big problems we have in renewable energies is basically energy storage devices. Yeah? So far, we've not really been really effective. We talk about pump storage, we talk about compressed air storage, we talk about batteries. But one of the cheapest, most effective storage devices is really capacitors. But we haven't done much work on capacitors until now. Now we're basically working with the Japanese to make what is called super activated carbon, yeah? Which would be like in simple terms, would be like a little piece of blotting paper that could soak up 1 glass of water. It creates enormous amount of places to store energy. For those of you who might remember your old physics, you basically can store energy in certain places and then recover it when you want. That's the job of the capacitor. This is stuff that keeps your power supply steady in your IT devices. So we have those technologies. Air conditioning, solar air conditioning, that we've worked with the Chinese to basically make available to small island states. We use an enormous amount of water. Maybe in most island states, 20–30% of the electricity is used for water pumping. I'm not sure what it is in Jamaica, but I know it's a big chunk. But then you find that maybe 50% of the water that leaves the pumping station never gets to the meter, which means 10% of the electricity basically goes to replenish the underground aquifer. Now, so we've developed, even at the end, what they call very low flush sanitation systems that use 1/16 the amount of water or no water at all to make sanitation services available. So we're looking at a whole host of technologies that we can facilitate the transfer into the small island states, both for energy efficiency, energy conservation, and for supply side. Information and communication. With the World Bank, we're now putting in place a virtual network that will allow all people in SIDS to see technologies in other places where they work, the economics, the technical viability, so that you don't have to go surfing all over. You can go to a one-stop and say, let me check on what all the experiences in small island states with a particular type of technology or training. So that's another way in which we're helping the energy sector and supporting energy for all. Next one. Capacity building. This has been a big sore point of mine for a long time, even when I was at the university. We are not meeting the challenge of providing the human resource pool that we need to transform the energy sector. Yeah? We need to be a lot more deliberate, and I don't have any problems with the social sciences and so on, but I do think we need to prioritize, and we need to allocate more resources to more technical training, more science, more technology, more researchers, more managers, and this. So a big chunk of what we will do will be capacity building collectively across the SIDS through our tertiary institutions. And finally, we can never get this done if we don't have the public on our side. If the citizens of our countries do not feel that what we are proposing makes sense and they have benefits from participation, they won't participate. So a big chunk of what we will also do is support public education. All right, now a little bit of we're a year in operation, and this is our project pipeline. You see, we have about 30 member states who are in the SIDS doc. 20 have submitted projects. You see the Pacific, 33 million in project. You see the Caribbean, 284 million in project. And the African countries, about 21.